morning, it's 9 o'clock. This is Rachel Burden and it is your call. Last summer's riots. Do you blame the parents? Is that too simplistic? That is the verdict of some children's charities on a report looking at why the riots happened. Bad parenting is one of the causes the report lists, but critics say parents are just being used as scapegoats. Camilla Batman-Gelage is the founder of Kids Company, an organisation which helps vulnerable children in inner city areas.
Parents on the whole really love their children, so if they're not managing to do parenting, there's very good reason. We can't just point the finger at them and blame them, because that doesn't get us anywhere.
We'll hear more from Camilla in a few minutes. Do you agree? Is it also down to, as the report also suggests, a lack of opportunities for young people? Or do parents and teachers need to take responsibility for what happened in August? Last summer's riots, do you blame the parents? 0500 909 693. You can call me now.
5 Live.
Good morning, it's your call. It's 6 minutes past 9 on Wednesday morning. Rachel Burden here with you. So last summer's riots, do you blame the parents for what happened? It's a question being asked by the report into the riots, which was officially published today. Are kids getting the right support, they were asking? Are they getting the right kind of control, the right kind of guidance from parents? And there is an acknowledgement that some children are growing up without a single positive adult figure in their lives. Isn't it parents who are best placed to impose discipline, to provide a moral framework, I suppose, to instill a sense of pride both in the individual and a sense of pride in the community in which these young people are living? It all comes back to the home, doesn't it? Ultimately, what do you think? 0500 909 693. Give me a call on that. Or is it a lot more complicated than that? The Prime Minister, for example, has pointed his finger at poor policing tactics in the past. There's also discussion about low literacy levels. Are the schools failing these young people in part? These are also children who live in a culture of consumption and acquisition, which permeates everything at the moment. Social networking played a role. Criminal gangs certainly played a role. And maybe these were just bad kids. I don't know. What do you think? 0500 909 693. Give me a call. Do you blame the parents for last summer's riots? Let's talk to Camilla Batman-Gelage, who has been with us this morning. She's the founder of Kids Company, which helps vulnerable children in inner city areas. Morning again, Camilla.
Good morning.
Thanks very much for coming back to us. And Lynette Burrows, who's a writer and broadcaster. Good morning, Lynette.
Hello.
Do you blame the parents?
Well, not particularly. I mean, I think I haven't read the report, but it sounds wonderfully middle-class and boneless to me. I mean, obviously, parents do play a very big part in our culture. They don't in all cultures. And it was obvious from the fact that an awful lot of parents didn't turn up at court to the children, and that this is normal behaviour for the children, because you see them hanging around parks and street corners all over London, totally without any parental supervision. I think what they don't want to face is that when you bring in millions of people from different cultures, they bring with them their culture. They were not Polish children or Hungarian children or Italians or Spanish going mad and rioting and looting and attacking anything that moved. They were children who, if you trace them back to where they come from, they do the same there. So I think this is something that people don't want to face. This is the consequence.
Sorry, say again. If you trace them back to where they come from, they do the same there.
The culture that they come from
be
tolerates
specific.
the same.
Be specific.
Well, if you go back to the Caribbean, I have a very good friend lives there, this is very standard. The police regularly shoot people who are rioting, but they keep on top of it by very strong arm tactics. But they have to. It's the same in Africa. Riot is a way of life with them. And then we fall about with astonishment when they come here, transplanted in, a very short space of time, and they do exactly the same. And we say, there's something wrong, and they're blaming the police and their education system. It's a cultural thing, and we've got to face that. It takes more than wagging a finger at it and saying, this won't do.
A culture of crime in the Caribbean, riots in Africa. Camilla Batman-Gelage, is that the explanation for this?
I find this explanation unacceptable, because there are large numbers of Caribbean individuals and African individuals who are completely law-abiding and contribute enormously to society. You cannot make a statement like that. It's incorrect. basically, if you look at the riots report, it divides into two bits. There are about 50% who were opportunists, i.e. individuals who were around and they looted shops because the shops were broken down. Another 50% exhibited exceptionally aggressive behaviors, and they were the drivers of the riots, the initiators. Now, that group have, if you burrow down to it, have a history of very complex levels of breakdown in their social care structures. It's interesting that more than 60% had special needs. In excess of 40% were children and young people from school meals, i.e. from the poorest households during the summer where we don't provide alternative school meals. So I think what you have to be is a little bit more sophisticated about this debate. You can't say the rioters were homogenous. They had different motivations and different drivers. And I, for one, would suggest that we look at the initiators as a group, find out what's breaking down around them, and create the robust structures to put back care into their lives.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Well, I'm obviously not saying all people of whatever group behave the same. They never do. But a thing like this is pretty spectacular and pretty different. And I remember 20 years ago, I belonged to, though I'm not black, I belonged to a group of Black Parents Association who were campaigning about poor discipline in schools and the fact that the children had come from another culture. In their case, it was mostly the Caribbean. They didn't like the Africans. But they said that their children were just going to go off the rails because they didn't have any of the things in place that they had in the Caribbean, where they could be expelled from school, they had corporal punishment, they were very controlled. And they said, you'll have trouble ahead because you're just letting these children run wild and you'll reap the whirlwind. And I think that's what we can see.
This is completely unacceptable. What are you saying? Are you saying that people from a different race have a different makeup and therefore in their behavior repertoire? That is outrageous.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying people from a different culture have different ways of behaving. You've only got to look at a crowd of Italian football people or Spanish ones. They have.
That accepts chronic antisocial behavior. No culture. The African culture is highly disciplined. If you actually look at its heritage, it was dominated by a whole lot of chiefs who maintained discipline in villages. This is completely unacceptable.
That's probably
something like this.
Camilla, that's probably very true. But when the chief's power was broken by colonialism, which it was, it wasn't replaced in the modern age by anything that was as strong. They didn't have girls that get pregnant. They weren't plagued by drugs. They weren't plagued by all sorts of things.
Is that the problem of the individuals, or is it that Britain is running a society which negates the value of human beings, has inadequate care structures?
Well, that is a very important point, and it's a good one at which to bring in a couple of our callers. Troy on the M25, Ian in Manchester. Let's get your thoughts briefly. First of all, Troy. Good morning.
Rachel, what was the question to start with, please?
The question was, do you blame the parents?
For the riots?
Yes.
Sorry, we're going into other countries. For the riots in this country, my main point that I rang in for was, when I was a child, when we had tea time, we sat down for an hour. And as a family, we talked about what we did in the day. I have two children. One's a girl, one's a boy, one's 5, one's 16. And that 16-year-old to the 5-year-old would not dare get down from that table unless he says, thanks for my dinner, now get down from the table. There are no family values anymore. That is where a family is bonded, at the tea table. And I bet you, Rachel, you go round and ask all these people, you go home for tea, you sit down with your family and talk to your brother and your sister or your mum or your dad or grandparents, whatever the situation may be? And I bet the answer is no. Your other two callers, sorry, didn't know their names, sorry, apologies for that. I think they're getting too complicated. It's basics first. If your car breaks down, you look at what the basic thing is first, so you don't go straight into an engine. You do the basics first.
Thank you very much, Troy. So it's family bonding at the tea table. Ian in Manchester, what do you think? Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Just a quick story of what happened with my daughter and the way I was brought up. She was thrown out of a library, basically. It sounds like a trivial thing, but she, a lot of people may put that down to her age or just being a child.
What was she doing, Ian? Do you know?
Well, just being cheeky, disrespectful.
Right.
Not doing as she was told by adults, basically, which she should have been. And she was banned. We got a letter home, and her punishment was to actually go back into that library, face up to those people who she'd disrespected, and her punishment was to apologise face to face.
So it's back to the parents again, is it, Ian? Do you think?
I think so. The woman in the library said, "You are the first person in the last 10 years who has ever come in to apologise." And I just think that some parents think that a lot of things are acceptable now, which aren't, and consequences for actions are not seen.
Thank you very much, Ian in Manchester. Thank you. 0500 909 693. Lots of calls to get through this morning. Do let me know what you think. Last summer's riots, are the parents to blame? We'll talk more with Lynette and Camilla in just a moment or two. It's 16 minutes past 9.
Your call.
Good morning. It's 18 minutes past 9. Yes, it's your call this morning. Are parents to blame for last summer's riots? What do you think? Paul in Newcastle, good morning.
Hello there. My son has been stolen a little bit. Basically, people are tribal. The northeast of England didn't riot. There was no riots there whatsoever. The parents in the northeast are no different to the parents in the southeast. So Geordies aren't different to Scousers or Scottish or Welsh or whatever and all that. It's a tribal. People are tribal. When the Brazilian lad was on the tube and the police ran on and shot that kid dead in front of people, you didn't get all Latin Americans heading off to PC world, helping themselves to computers and all that. There was a news agent battened to the ground by a policeman. You didn't get all the people from his ethnic background sort of running away to PC world. But there was a certain type of person was shot and killed. And not everyone, sorry, I'll take that back. A lot of people thought this is our chance and started rioting. No, I mean...
Just hang on a sec. Just a certain type of person.
Well, yeah. You can't get away from it. People.
Well, I don't. What do you mean?
Well, I see it sort of like black people sort of had, because a black person was killed, it kicked off. The kid who got shot was black, so it kicked off. When the white person got killed, it didn't kick off. When the Latin American person got shot on a tube, it was horrific. People didn't kick off. People didn't riot all over the place. People in the northeast of England, right, didn't kick off. A couple of people tried on Facebook and they got slapped down straight away. Now, the people in northeast England don't have any more pride in the northeast of England than Scousers, than Mancunians.
There were riots in Manchester, there were riots in the Midlands, weren't there? This wasn't just isolated to London.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is the people in northeast England are no different to the people of southeast England. We don't have any more pride in the northeast than the people of southeast do.
Okay.
So you can't turn around and say it's the parents, because the parents in the northeast are not going to be any different to the parents in the southeast, are they?
Let me just, because the discussion is moving in this direction and because certain assertions have been made by Lynette Burrows, who's still with us. Hello, Lynette. Let me just bring you some statistics then in terms of convictions for those involved in the rioting. The most comprehensive statistics that we've been able to get hold of date back to October last year. They reveal that those involved in the riots were poorer, younger and of lower educational achievement than average. 13% of those arrested were gang members, broadly speaking, whatever that means. In terms of ethnicity, 42% of those charged were white, 46% black, 7% Asian and 5% were classified as other. What does that tell you, Lynette Burrows, Paul?
It tells me that you're mixing all sorts of areas together. I've got two sons who live in London, and I've got another one lives in Ealing. And they went out in it, and they said it was all black people or people of colour. It's just that the media, particularly the BBC, bless your hearts, have made it impossible for people to speak honestly about this. And what the dear lady Camilla was saying, it's not all people, of course we know that. And what the other caller was saying about sitting down and having tea together and asking if they can get down from the table, it's an English habit. It is our culture. They don't have it.
Well,
I think that makes no difference.
I think there will be people who will probably contest that assumption, but we will come back to it. And thank you very much, Lynette Burrows. Thanks to Paul. Lots of calls to get through. Let's talk to Greg in Manchester, to Lawrence in the London area, and Debbie in the Wirral on the Wirral as well. Good morning, Lawrence. First of all, what do you want to say this morning?
Well, first of all, good morning to your listeners and to yourself. I was a bit shocked by Lynette Burrows' views. I usually do agree with her on parenting and so forth, but it's a pity she's not here, because I'd like to know what Caribbean island, yesterday or today, do we have there's this rioting come from black people where you see rioting going on a regular basis or an infrequent basis? Or what country or what city in Africa do we see them running up the promenades of their shops, looting in shops? It doesn't happen. When riots happen, there's usually a reason. If it's a coup, then it's a coup. If it's not a coup, then it's not a coup. And let's not remove the fact that vandals, historically, were not of African or Caribbean origin. Okay? Number two, what seemed to be airbrushed from this conversation, from the very first day, where everybody was saying it, trying to say it was just black kids, is that on that very... I'm a Spurs fan. There was a home game at Tottenham, 28,000 fans, mainly white, were there. Airbrushed from this conversation. Also airbrushed from this conversation was the fact that Tottenham Hotspur and Haringey were in an impasse about the expansion of Tottenham Hotspur football ground, so much so that they put in for the London Olympics to spoil West Ham and to scupper the plans there, only because they wasn't getting their way at White Hart Lane. Mysteriously, all of a sudden, they... see what Tottenham looks like now. Tottenham's got to go ahead.
I don't quite get the connection, Lawrence. Can you explain to me?
This bad parenting is it's a distraction. And none of these reviews...
bad parenting is a distraction. So what is the cause behind the riots?
I suspect this was planned. It's planned by big money, Tottenham being a Jewish club, a big money, and it's not the first time that people will use a community who are ill-educated or uneducated or not aware of the big plans afoot to make bigger money.
OK, so you regard this as some kind of wider conspiracy in which young people were manipulated to go out and riot on the streets and then it spread?
Also, we know that when a football ground hires the police for security, they hire the police. No wonder why, when the family was out there asking the police to come out, they didn't come out. They didn't come out and they were bought by Spurs. Well,
Lawrence, OK, thank you. Greg, in Manchester, morning, Greg.
Good morning.
Is this the fault of the parents? Is it a wider, I don't know, industrial conspiracy? What do you think?
Well, I think, I think it's not as simplistic as just blaming it on the parents, though I think that is a big part of it. It's certainly not to do with race. I think that's a rather silly argument that lady was making earlier. I can't believe I'm hearing that in the 21st century personally, but it's very, very ignorant. But what I wanted to say about parents, I actually work in schools. I think this kind of ties into the issue around literacy and this idea that we're going to start fining schools for kids who can't read and write. I think people forget that, the amount of time that kids spend at school is pretty negligible compared to what they spend at home. And
something like 10% of the time a child spends in school up to the age of 18 is in school. Something like 90% is at home with the parents, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's about right. And I'm getting really, really frustrated. And I work very closely with teachers. I sort of work as a creative practitioner in schools, and so I work quite closely with teachers. And I get very frustrated for them that the blame always seems to land at their doorstep. And I think it's about responsibility. And parents just don't seem to. It means they don't. A lot of parents not showing up to parents' evenings. They're sort of sending off their kids off to school without the right equipment.
So the role of parents is critical. Greg, stay with us. Debbie on the Wirral, you agree, don't you, that there is parental responsibility here that's to blame?
Well, I just think we should go back to the question, are parents to blame? And most definitely, yes. I think the most important job in the world is to be a parent. And that's what I am. I didn't have great opportunities. I grew up on a housing estate. We've done so much for our children. They know what's right and what's wrong. And I just think, your children have to make choices in life. And my children choose to do the right thing because they have a good role model in their mum and dad.
Debbie, Greg, stay with us. Here's Anne Atkins. Good morning, Anne.
Good morning, Rachel.
Writer and broadcaster. So Greg and Anne both say, look, you know, you have to go back to the home. This is the responsibility of the parents. What do you think?
Yeah, well, undoubtedly. I mean, I'm fascinated by your statistic, the 10%, 90% statistic, which doesn't surprise me at all at the time you spend at school and at home. Undoubtedly, the home is by far the biggest influence on the child, and this is something that we've been ignoring for decades, really. You know, we talk about peer pressure, we talk about school responsibility of schools. It's all nonsense in a sense, in that the biggest influence on children are their parents, without any shadow of a doubt. But it's sorry to sort of be not exactly sitting on the fence, but putting both sides of the argument here, it's much too simplistic to say this is the fault of the parents. We live in a society that is profoundly anti-parent. We know, because all the research is overwhelming, that what is most beneficial for bringing up children is a stable, married is marriage. I mean, there's no two ways about it. All the research shows, overwhelming evidence from all over the place. Hundreds of studies have been done showing that boys are twice as likely to end up in court if they're not brought up with their father, that life expectancy is less if you're not brought up with both parents, all sorts of things, and that if the parents are married, they're 5 times, or is it 10 times more likely to stay together. We know this, and yet we live in a society that says it's fine to be a single parent. We have a government that says we mustn't stigmatise certain forms of family. We have no tax breaks for married people. We don't have the word marriage in any public policy. You can't point the finger at the 19-year-old mother struggling to bring up 3 children because her boyfriend's gone off, or she's had 2 or 3 different boyfriends and they've all gone off because that's the norm. You can't say, it's your fault, Ducky. Is it her fault? Is it her parents' fault? Is it her grandparents' fault? Is it the boyfriend's fault? Is it the fault of the society that says this is perfectly normal? So there's a sense in which, yes, of course, it's the fault, if you like, of parenting when things don't work out right, because that is by far the biggest influence on the child and on the teenager and on the grown-up. But it is really much too simple to haul the parents in front of the beak and say, you're going to take the clobber for this, because we haven't supported the parents in any way. We haven't said, you're the most important person here.
Anne Atkins, thank you very much. Quick word, Greg. Do you want to come in finally?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, I mean, I would equally say that it's too simplistic to say it's all just about marriage. I mean, I know for a fact that there are many, for example, gay couples who live in civil partnerships who raise children, absolutely fine, no problems, and there probably are problems there as well. I don't think it's just about marriage, and I'm not saying that the parenting is the sole issue. It's an issue amongst other things, but I do think it's a big issue, and I think the shirking of responsibility that happens across the society where parents are concerned, whether that's in school or at home, is a big problem. And I just think we need to kind of cultivate a sense of responsibility towards our children.
Thank you very much, Greg. Thanks. It's really nice to hear from you this morning, from Debbie as well. Thank